Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Manisha, and today I'm going to be talking about the books I read in September. So in total in September I read 4 books, so I read 1,781 pages, and I had an average rating of 3.88. I read 3 romances and 1 literary fiction. I started out the month with a reread of one of my absolutely favorite books and book couples, Reckless. So I genuinely loved this book so much. It actually stood up to the reread test because I feel like usually I reread books and then the rating just goes down. It just went up because I think the first time I read it, it was like a 4.5. But then just watching Winter's development as a character was just so beautiful and touching, and just having Winter and Theo just grow so much as a couple, I appreciated it so much. It was just so cute. And if you are interested in my thoughts, I did do a full Chestnut Springs reading vlog, but Reckless just kind of seeped into September, so you can check that out. But all-time fave of the Chestnut Springs series, they are like my one true pairing in Chestnut Springs. I then continued on the Elsie Silver Express and I started and finished Wild Eyes, and genuinely I was absolutely locked in on this book for the first probably I want to say 60%, because the banter was so good, the tension was so good, and then I just genuinely enjoyed the characters so much. I feel like sometimes you can read a romance and you don't necessarily care about the characters so much, you just care about them being together, if that makes sense. Like, not that you don't care, but there's just not you don't feel that they're real people, or that they are just there for more than to just fall in love. But the characters in this book are so well created. I loved it. The not only the two main love interest characters, but having the kids be top tier characters, that's actually a skill, I feel like, because usually I just want a kid to be a baby, just be not really influential to the plot, but having these kids just be so important to both the female main characters' development and growth, and just kind of recognizing things about herself, and then also they're just such little personalities and they were just so adorable. And I think this is probably the first time I've ever enjoyed a kid in a book. They're just so cute. I could not. And then West was just such a good male love interest. He's just so down to earth and kind of just gave that little spin to Skylar's kind of worldview that she really needed to kind of put things in perspective and think about what she wants and what is important to her. It was really good. However, I feel like this book was maybe 6 to 100 pages too long, and genuinely that kind of just brought the rating down, because I was just there's so many things that are happening here where I'm just this is not necessary. It kind of feels like a filler. But this book was already shorter than Wild Love, so I guess if it was even shorter it wouldn't really make sense because it would just look weird. But a great book, 4 stars, a banger. So the next book I read was Daydream by Hannah Grace, and I think Hannah Grace took a little step out of kind of the mold of what she usually writes, because I feel like you think Hannah Grace, you kind of think romance, and not that Daydream is not romance, but it definitely leans more heavily into literary fiction. And was that what I was expecting? No, but it was still a very decent read. I think that the way that Hannah Grace captured the experience of being an older sibling was just honestly a little uncomfortable. She nailed it so on the head. For the romance aspect, I really appreciated how naturally the romance between Henry and Hallie developed. I think it was more akin to a friendship, in all honesty. And you know what? I feel like that type of relationship is rarely depicted in romance books, but this was just very we both have certain life experiences and ways that we think and need to cope with things, and them kind of troubleshooting and helping each other. And I think that that was very beautiful to read about, and just that's very important, I think, to have represented, because again, not every relationship is going to be like a swoon worthy romance. Sometimes it's just the little things that add up together. That also contributed to the feeling that it was like a literary fiction type book, or it was more literary fiction than romance, because I feel like romance is all like woo and like having all of these flashy things, but this was very like, it felt very real. So I think again, it was just very much like two people becoming more and more comfortable with each other and kind of existing in that space. And so if you're going into this book expecting an icebreaker level kind of smut and romance, I wouldn't really say that the two couples are even comparable. I then started an entirely different type of hockey book, and I read Beartown. So this book, I feel like, has a lot of expectation put on it. You see a lot of people reading Beartown, raving about Beartown, just going off generally about Beartown and how impactful, emotional, what a good book it is, how well it's written. And I think Fredrik Backman, definitely incredible writer. I have read, I think, one other work besides Beartown by him, and that was great. Obviously, my range right now, though, is just, I think it's Every Day the Way Home Gets Longer and Longer, and then now Beartown. So I don't have a great scope, but I know that he is capable of evoking these emotions and really fulfilling the labels that are stuck on him and his works. But this book was kind of frustrating for me because I feel like genuinely the book was so slow to get started. And, you know, once I got to 50% through or so, I thought, okay, I understand why, because we need to really get immersed into the culture and the town and the way that people and different characters are thinking about things and how they feel, and getting more of a sense of their motivations potentially. And so I understand it, but it was slow going to start. And then we crossed that kind of inciting event. We're really just getting into kind of dealing with the outcome of that happening and its impacts on the town. And I was really hoping for a little more actual development in the town, in the minds of the people. And while we get that a small amount, there's really no changes. And it was so disappointing. And I left that book feeling like, what was the point of me reading this? Because if I wanted to read about something that would happen in real life and how people in real life would react, I would just read a memoir. Because I feel like with this book, there was no catharsis. Like, yes, you see some things in the future that you're like, okay, like things will somewhat work out. But really, I just feel like there was no consequences. And so this book was just meh. Like, and then because we're also seeing those flash forwards to the future, I'm like, why do I need to read the next books? There's no real compelling reason for me to do that. I don't know. I think it's also like when I go into a book expecting something, it's disappointing when it doesn't meet those expectations, but you know, I think that might be a me problem, I fear. But overall, yes, this book did have some emotional scenes, some things that were heart-wrenching, and I think obviously the character work in this book, phenomenally done. Like, Fredrik Backman can really bring a character to life. And even for side characters, doesn't even need to be the main character. He was very good at constructing this town of people, and it was so immersive, and you really felt like you were almost like a camera in this town, just looking at people and kind of looking into their minds and how they're thinking. So phenomenal. I just think the actual plot and story was not satisfying. And to leave on that note, thank you for listening to me rant about the 4 books I read in September. Let me know what you've read. I know this is coming out so late, it's literally mid-October, but yeah, I hope to see you soon. And thank you for watching. Bye!